Okay, so the second book that I want to share is actually called Mayhem and Mass by Olivia Matthews, and this is the first book in her a Sister Lou mystery. Well, Sister Lou mystery. As you can see, it's what is that? Was my curtain. As you can see, you have a cat, which there was no cat present in this book. I think this was a marketing technique, but you do see the sister here going into the church or the congregation. But I have to say that I enjoyed this book. I'm gonna leave it thoroughly out, but I enjoyed this book. Much more than the other book, to be honest. I got to keep it real in that aspect. And I'm much more excited about reading the next book in this series. Now, this series features 3 protagonists. The main one, of course, is Sister Lou, who, of course, is a sister as a part of this congregation, this church, etc., etc. And then there's her nephew that comes along and helps her solve the mystery. And then there's a newspaper reporter who help her as well. So there's like a trio of these guys coming together to solve this mystery. Now, as it concerns the mystery portion of this book, the murder jumps off with a longtime college professor, friend of Sister Lou, coming to give a speech to the congregation, a speech to, this church that she belongs to. He is a theology professor, and of course, if you're dealing with religion, he has some rather controversial views that are not exactly accepted. So unfortunately for him, he ends up residing in a hotel where he is subsequently murdered. And then, of course, Sister Lou and this trio of investigators, consisting of her nephew, and the newspaper reporter, they come in to solve the murder. Now, although I love this book, as I wrote in my blog post, while it was interesting and kept me glued, there was a number of different writing nuances that kept sort of like I don't want to say distracting me, but maybe that is the correct word, but they were distracting me. One was the author put so much emphasis on hair color, the color of a character's watch, their pants, their trousers, right? Their blouses, the cars. She put so much emphasis, like every single car had to be described by its color repeatedly. After a while, I kind of got into the rhythm of it. At the very beginning, it was just like, girl, why you keep describing? I know that this woman's watch is red. Why do you keep describing it as red? We got it. And then another piece of looping information, a writing technique that just kept kind of bothering me was the procedural aspect of the book, the investigative prowess. It really was kind of like this big circular loop that just kept happening. It really was a matter of Sister Lou deciding who is the suspect. They go to the suspect's building. One owned a gym shop. One was like another professor. But there's always a scene in the parking lot. There's always a description of what's going on in the parking lot. Then they go to that said suspect's desk. It's always in his office. It's always at his desk. It got to the point where, as it regards to suspects themselves, they became much more indistinguishable, because they all had kind of the same temperament to me. And then there's always, within this office, there's this piece of this small tidbit nuance that makes Sister Lou decides whether or not this suspect is much more, has much more of a motive to kill, her professor friend than another. And it just kind of kept looping and looping and looping and spiraling in that direction. So, if you read this, don't really look for a lot of breaks in the investigative scenes with some kind of action or anything like that. But what she does fill in between those spaces is a lot of and I thought it was a little bit too much of the relationship developing between Sister Lou and her nephew, Sister Lou and the investigators, Sister Lou and her friends and the congregation, Sister Lou and the other sisters. Between that, a lot of relationship development was building up in there, and that kind of it just felt like filler. But at the end of the day, I really did enjoy this book. I'm telling you, if I just managed to go ahead and read all the way through this book, then there was something that in it that had me hooked. So I do want to see where this series goes from this point forward. So that's it, guys. I just want to share those books with you guys. I put a link to each of my individual blog posts down below, and you can just check it out there and decide if you want to join and read some of these books. But I think they're worth a try. So we'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Love yourself and read all the books that you want to read, because this is about you. Peace. No, 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 no.